You are nothing to me. You were a mistake, a moment of weakness I will not repeat." The words hung in the air like a death sentence, and Nora Blake felt each syllable pierce through her chest with the precision of a silver blade. She stood in the center of the great hall of the Blackwood Palace, surrounded by hundreds of pack members whose eyes bore into her with a mixture of pity and disgust. Alpha King Damian Blackwood stood on the raised platform before his throne, his face carved from stone, his golden eyes refusing to meet hers. Beside him, Lady Seraphina Ashford smiled, a delicate curve of red lips that spoke of triumph and cruelty in equal measure. Nora's hands instinctively moved to her stomach, where a secret grew that would change everything. But she said nothing. What could she say? That the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories had spent one night with her 3 weeks ago, whispering promises against her skin that now tasted like ash. That his wolf had called to hers in a way that made her believe, foolishly, desperately, that perhaps she mattered. The assembly had been called specifically for this moment, this public humiliation. Seraphina had made certain of that. The elegant she-wolf had discovered Nora leaving the king's private chambers that fateful morning, and while Damian had sworn it meant nothing, that it was merely a lapse in judgment during a difficult negotiation period, Seraphina had demanded this. A public rejection. A clear message to every Omega and low-ranking wolf in the kingdom that they would never rise above their station. "Remove her from my sight," Damian commanded, his voice devoid of the warmth it had held when he had traced the curve of her jaw and told her she was beautiful. "Escort her beyond our borders. She is no longer welcome in Moonstone territory." The guards moved forward, their hands rough on her arms, and Nora finally looked up. She met Damian's eyes for one brief, shattering moment. She saw the flicker of something there, something that might have been regret or pain. But it vanished so quickly she could not be certain it had existed at all. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him about the child, to force him to acknowledge what they had created together. But pride stopped her tongue. If he could cast her out so easily, what would he do to an innocent child born of an Omega mother? No, she would protect this baby, even if it meant protecting it from its own father. The journey beyond pack borders took 2 days. The guards were not cruel, but neither were they kind. They simply followed orders, depositing her at the edge of human territory with nothing but the clothes on her back and the small bag of belongings she had been permitted to gather. The transition zone between wolf and human lands was a desolate stretch of forest and abandoned farms, a place where neither species claimed full dominion. Nora walked until her feet bled, until the bond to her pack stretched so thin it finally snapped, leaving a hollow ache in her chest that rivaled the pain of Damian's rejection. She collapsed in a small human town called Millbrook, a place of ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that monsters and magic existed just beyond their perception. A kind elderly woman named Martha found her unconscious on the steps of the local church and took her in without questions. Over the following months, Nora built a new existence. She worked in Martha's bookstore, a quiet sanctuary filled with the smell of old paper and possibilities. She told people her name was Nora Bennett, that she had left an abusive relationship and needed to start over. It was not entirely a lie. The humans accepted her story with sympathy and gave her the space she needed. As her pregnancy progressed, she felt her wolf retreat deeper inside her, a protective mechanism to hide their true nature from human detection. It was painful, like severing a part of her soul, but necessary. When Asher was born on a cold November night, Nora held him and wept. He was perfect, small and squirming and utterly perfect. But when he opened his eyes for the first time, her heart nearly stopped. Golden eyes, the distinctive Blackwood gold that marked the royal lineage, eyes that could belong to no one else. In that moment, looking at her son, Nora made a vow. She would give him everything: love, safety, a chance at a normal life. He would never know the pain of rejection, never feel worthy because of his birth. And if that meant hiding his heritage, suppressing his wolf until he was old enough to understand and choose for himself, then that was what she would do. 5 years passed like water through fingers, each day blending into the next in a routine of safety and sameness. Asher grew into a bright, curious child with Damien's eyes and Nora's dark hair. He asked about his father sometimes, and Nora told him simple truths. His father lived far away. His father did not know. About him. His father had made choices that hurt people. Asher seemed to accept this with the resilience of childhood, more interested in his picture books and the stray cat he had adopted than in the absent parent he had never met. Nora worked at the bookstore during the day and took online college courses at night, determined to build a future that did not depend on anyone but herself. She made friends cautiously, always aware that getting too close meant risking questions she could not answer. Martha became a grandmother figure to Asher, teaching him to bake cookies and read before kindergarten. Life was not perfect, but it was theirs, and that meant everything. Then, the attacks started. At first, they were distant news reports. Hikers found mauled in the forests near the border, livestock slaughtered in ways that defied natural predator behavior. The human authorities blamed wolves, the animal kind, and organized hunting parties. But Nora knew better. She could smell the rogue wolf scent even through the sanitized news reports, could sense the deliberate pattern of the violence. Someone was pushing the boundaries between territories, testing the borders, causing chaos. She tried to ignore it, to convince herself it had nothing to do with her. But when Asher came home from kindergarten one afternoon, talking excitedly about the big dogs he had seen in the woods behind the school, fear seized her heart. "What big dogs, sweetheart?" she asked, keeping her voice calm even as her wolf stirred for the first time in years. "Really big ones, Mama. Bigger than any dog I have ever seen. They were watching us play, but they did not come close. One of them had eyes like mine." Asher pointed to his own golden eyes with pride, unaware of the terror his words inspired. That night, Nora barely slept. She reinforced the wards around their small apartment with every bit of latent magic she could summon, ancient protective symbols her grandmother had taught her before. She died. If rogues were scouting human territories, if they had seen Asher, recognized something in him, then nowhere was truly safe. The next day brought Damien Blackwood back into her life with the force of a hurricane. Nora was closing the bookstore, Asher chattering beside her about a drawing he had made in art class, when the black SUVs pulled up outside. She knew what they were before the doors even opened. The vehicles were too expensive for Millbrook, too clean, and they carried the faint scent of wolf even through the glass and steel. Her first instinct was to run, to grab Asher and disappear, but it was already too late. Damien stepped out of the lead vehicle, and 5 years vanished in an instant. He looked older, harder, as if the weight of the crown had carved itself into his features. His golden eyes scanned the street with predatory precision before landing on the bookstore window where Nora stood frozen. For a moment, neither moved. Then Asher tugged on her hand. "Mama, who is that man? Why is he looking at us like that?" Damien's gaze dropped to the child, and Nora watched the exact moment he understood. The color drained from his face. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. His wolf surged so close to the surface that his eyes flashed with inner light. Nora. Her name on his lips was a question, an accusation, a prayer. She straightened her spine, placed herself between Damien and her son, and met his gaze with all the strength she had built over 5 lonely years. "You need to leave. You are not welcome here." "That child," Damien said, his voice rough with barely contained emotion. "Those eyes. He is mine." It was not a question. Asher looked between them with confusion, his small hand tightening around hers. "Mama." "Go back to the car, Asher," Nora said softly. "Ask Miss Martha to take you upstairs. Now." Something in her tone made him obey without argument. When the door closed behind him, Nora turned back to Damien with fury, blazing in her chest. He is not yours. You gave up any claim to him the day you threw me away like garbage. You never told me. Damien stepped closer, his beta and 2 guards flanking him, but maintaining a respectful distance. You were pregnant, and you never said a word. Would it have mattered? Nora's laugh was bitter. Would you have chosen differently if you had known? Or would you have simply demanded I get rid of the problem to avoid scandal? The words hit him like physical blows. She saw it in the way he flinched, the way his jaw clenched. I would have protected you. Protected him. The way you protected me in that hall? When you let Serafina orchestrate my humiliation? When you called me a mistake in front of the entire pack? Nora's voice rose despite her best efforts to remain calm. I will not let you hurt him the way you hurt me. So whatever political emergency brought you to this town, handle it and leave. We want nothing from you. There are rogues in the area, Damien said, forcing himself back to practical matters, even as his eyes kept drifting to the window where Asher had disappeared. Dangerous ones. They have been testing our borders for months, and now they are moving into human territory. I came to establish a perimeter, to protect the innocent civilians who do not even know what is hunting them. How noble, Nora said coldly. Protect us from a distance, then. You are good at distance. Nora, please. The please broke something in her. Because Damien Blackwood did not beg. We need to talk about this, about him. I have a son I never knew existed, and you have been raising him alone in human territory, where he cannot fully be what he is. That is not fair to anyone. Fair? The word tasted like poison. You want to talk about fair. I have given him everything I have. Love, safety, a home where he does not have to prove his worth every single day. I will not let you take that from him just because biology says you contributed. DNA. A new voice cut through the tension. Well, this is quite the domestic drama. Serafina emerged from one of the other vehicles, her designer clothes and perfect makeup absurdly out of place on the small town street. She looked Nora up and down with barely disguised contempt. So the little Omega survived. How disappointing that she also bred. Damien turned on her with a snarl. Get back in the car, Serafina. This does not concern you. Oh, but it does, darling. Serafina's smile was razor sharp. If that child really is yours, and I am certain we can arrange a paternity test to be absolutely sure, then he is a potential heir. A bastard heir born of an Omega, yes, but still a complication to our arrangement. I have a right to understand the situation. Our arrangement, Damien said with deadly calm, was political convenience, nothing more. An arrangement you have honored for 5 years, Serafina countered. We are to be married in 6 months, Damien. The contracts are signed. Unless you plan to cause a scandal that will weaken your position with the council and possibly trigger a succession crisis, I suggest you remember your priorities. Nora had heard enough. You are all insane. Every single one of you. I do not care about your politics or your contracts or your kingdoms. Stay away from my son. She turned to go back into the bookstore, but Damien's hand shot out, catching her wrist with surprising gentleness. I cannot do that, he said quietly. Not now. That I know. Those rogues are targeting children, Nora. Specifically children with strong bloodlines. If they have seen him, if they have caught his scent, then he is in danger. Real danger. You cannot protect him alone. The fear that had been coiling in her stomach since Asher mentioned the big dogs tightened into a knot. What do you mean, targeting children? 3 pups have been taken in the last 2 months from packs along the border. All of them under the age of 7. All of them from alpha or beta families. We have been tracking the rogues, but they move like ghosts, and we have found no trace of the missing children. Damien's expression was grim. The attacks on humans are a diversion, a way to destabilize the region and keep our forces spread thin while they execute their real plan. Which is? Nora hated that she was listening, hated that his words were making horrible sense. We do not know yet, but a child with Blackwood blood, with potential royal heritage, would be an invaluable target for anyone wanting leverage against me or the crown. Damien's grip on her wrist tightened fractionally. Let me protect you both. Put guards on your home. Establish a security perimeter. You do not have to forgive me or let me into his life. Just let me keep him safe. Nora wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed that letting Damien back into their lives, even peripherally, was a mistake that would only lead to more pain. But the mother in her, the part that would do anything to protect Asher, could not ignore the genuine fear in Damien's eyes. Fine, she said finally, but your guards stay outside. They do not interact with Asher. They do not interfere with our lives. And if I decide this is not working, they leave immediately. Agreed? Agreed, Damien said, relief flickering across his features. I will have a team in place by nightfall. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories, like this one. The next week was surreal. Nora went about her daily routine with Asher, taking him to school, working at the bookstore, making dinner, reading bedtime stories, but always aware of the wolves watching from the shadows. Damien's guards were professional and discreet, but their presence changed everything. Asher noticed, of course. Children always did. Mama, why are those men always outside? He asked one evening as she tucked him into bed. Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart. Nora smoothed his dark hair back from his forehead, her heart aching at the worry in his young face. They are just making sure we are safe. There have been some problems in the area, and they are helping to protect people. Like superheroes? Asher's eyes lit up with the excitement only a 5-year-old could muster at such a concept. Something like that. Nora smiled despite herself. Now close your eyes. You have school tomorrow. But Asher was not ready to sleep. Mama, that man who came to the bookstore, the one with eyes like mine, he keeps looking at our house. Is he one of the protectors, too? Nora's breath caught. You have seen him? He stands across the street sometimes when you are cooking dinner. He just watches. He looks sad. Out of the mouths of children came truths adults tried desperately to hide. Nora kissed Asher's forehead and promised him everything was fine. But after he fell asleep, she went to the window. Damien was indeed standing across the street, partially obscured by the old oak tree, his eyes fixed on their apartment. For a long moment, Nora simply watched him watch them. Then she grabbed her jacket and went downstairs. You cannot do this, she said without preamble when she reached him. You cannot hover around like a ghost. It is confusing for him and it is inappropriate. I know. Damien did not look away from the window where Asher's room glowed with a nightlight. I just needed to see him, to know he was safe. He has been safe for 5 years without you. Because I did not know he existed. If I had known, Nora, if you had told me, you would have what? She turned to face him fully, forcing him to meet her eyes. Married me? An omega with no family, no status, no political value? Or would you have taken him and left me with nothing? Do not rewrite history to make yourself feel better about your choices. Damien's jaw clenched, but he did not deny her words. I was a coward. I chose politics over what my wolf knew was right. Every day since you left, I have regretted it. Regret does not change the past. No, he agreed. But it can change the future. Let me be part of his life, Nora. Not as a king, just as a father. Let me know him. The vulnerability in his voice was unexpected, and it frightened her more than his anger ever could. Because anger she could fight against, but this raw honesty threatened to unravel the protective walls she had built around her heart. I cannot think about that right now, she said finally. Not with everything else happening. Just focus on catching these rogues and keeping people safe. We can talk about the rest later. It was not a yes, but it was not a no either. And Damien seemed to understand that was the best he would get. There is something else you should know, he said, his tone shifting to something more official. The council wants to meet Asher. If he truly is my son, and there is no question that he is, then he has a claim to the Blackwood lineage. They want to verify it, to understand what it means for the succession. Absolutely not, Nora said immediately. I will not parade him in front of your council, like some curiosity to be examined and judged. I am not asking, Damien said. And there was the Alpha Command, the authority that had made him king. This is bigger than what either of us wants. If the rogues are targeting him because of his bloodline, then we need the council's full resources to protect him. That means they need to acknowledge his existence officially. And what happens when they decide an Omega's bastard son is not worthy of protection? When Seraphina convinces them he is a threat to her future children's claim? You may be king, Damien, but you are not invincible, and I will not gamble my son's life on your political capital. The standoff between them stretched taut as a wire. Finally, Damien stepped back. I will buy us time, but eventually this cannot be avoided. He deserves to know who he is what he is. You cannot keep him in the dark forever. Watch me, Nora said, and went back inside, leaving the Alpha King standing alone in the darkness. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. 3 days later, Asher disappeared from school. Nora received the call at the bookstore, the principal's voice apologetic and confused as she explained that Asher had been on the playground one moment and simply gone the next. The teachers had searched everywhere. The police had been called. But there was no sign of him. No witnesses, no evidence, nothing but a small scrap of his jacket caught on the fence at the back of the school property. The world tilted sideways. Nora felt her wolf, dormant for so long, explode to the surface with a fury that made her vision blur red. She shifted partially right there in the bookstore, her hands becoming claws, her teeth elongating, before she forced herself back under control. Damien was at the school before she was, his entire security team mobilized. His face a mask of cold rage that promised violence to whoever had dared touch his child. When Nora arrived, he grabbed her shoulders, his eyes searching hers. Tell me everything. What was he wearing? Did he mention anything unusual? Anyone watching him? He said nothing. Nora's voice broke on the words. He was fine this morning, happy. He wanted pancakes for breakfast and he made me promise we would go to the park this weekend. She could not breathe, could not think past the horrible. Images flooding her mind of Asher scared and alone and calling for her. We will find him, Damien said with absolute certainty. I swear to you, Nora, we will find him. His beta, a stern-faced man named Marcus, approached with a phone in his hand. My king, we found something. One of the human children saw a van near the back fence around the time Asher went missing. Black, no plates, tinted windows. She said she saw a woman with red hair talking to Asher through the fence, telling him his mother had sent her to pick him up. Red hair. Nora's blood turned to ice. Seraphina. No, Damien said immediately. Seraphina is many things, but she would not endanger a child. She has no reason to. She has every reason. Nora turned on him, her wolf so close to the surface that her eyes glowed. She sees him as a threat to her position, to her future children's claim. You heard her at the bookstore. She called him a complication. That does not mean she would kidnap him, Damien insisted, but there was doubt creeping into his voice. Marcus cleared his throat. My king, Lady Seraphina left the palace compound early this morning. She said she was going shopping in the city. We have not been able to reach her since. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. The truth hit Damien like a physical blow. Nora saw it in his eyes, the moment he allowed himself to consider the possibility that the woman he had been politically bound to for years might be capable of this. "Find her," he commanded Marcus. "Now. Track her phone, check surveillance cameras, contact every wolf in a 100-mile radius. I want her location within the hour." "And if she has left pack territory?" Marcus asked carefully. "Then we go after her. I do not care whose territory we have to cross. I do not care what laws we have to break. Find my son." The next hours were a blur of activity. Damien mobilized his entire network, calling in favors from allied packs, putting out alerts to rogue informants, using every resource at his disposal. Nora stayed by his side, unable to do anything else, her wolf howling inside her with a pain that threatened to tear her apart. They tracked Serafina's phone to a warehouse district on the outskirts of the city, an area abandoned after the economic collapse of a local factory. It was exactly the kind of place someone would use if they wanted privacy for something terrible. Damien insisted Nora stay behind, but she refused with a ferocity that brooked no argument. "That is my son. I will rip apart anyone who tries to stop me from getting to him." "Then stay close," Damien said. And she saw him truly acknowledge her for the first time, not as the Omega he had dismissed, but as a mother and a wolf with every right to fight for her child. They approached the warehouse with a team of 20 guards, moving with predatory silence. The building loomed against the night sky, its broken windows like empty eye sockets. Nora could smell Asher's scent even from outside, mixed with fear and something else. Something that made her wolf rage. Magic. Dark magic that had no place near children. Damien kicked in the door, and what they found inside made even the hardened warriors pause. The space had been converted into some kind of ritual chamber. Symbols were painted on the floor in what looked disturbingly like blood. Candles flickered around a central circle. And in the middle of it all, Asher sat, cross-legged and eerily calm, his eyes glowing with an unnatural silver light. Serafina stood behind him, her hands on his shoulders, chanting in a language that predated modern wolf packs. Around them, 5 rogues in human form maintained the perimeter, their eyes wild with the madness that came from living too long without pack bonds. "Stop!" Serafina's voice cut through the space like a whip. "Come any closer, and I cannot guarantee his safety. The spell is delicate." "What have you done?" Damien's roar shook the rafters. "Release him now, Serafina, or I will tear you apart with my bare hands." "You will do no such thing." Serafina's smile was serene, almost beatific. "Do you know what this child is, Damien? What she has been hiding from you all these years?" Her gaze shifted to Nora, sharp with malice. "The little Omega is not what she pretends to be. I had my suspicions when she survived the rejection bond breaking without going insane, when she managed to hide from every tracking spell we sent after her. So I did some research. Deep research into bloodlines and forgotten histories." "I do not care about your research." Damien moved forward. But Serafina's rogues shifted, their hands crackling with stolen magic. "Let my son go." "Our son is the key to everything," Serafina continued as if he had not spoken. "Silver wolf blood runs through his veins. Not from you, my dear king, but from his mother. Nora Blake is the last living descendant of the Lunaris line. The guardian wolves who could command moon magic itself. They were hunted to extinction 2 centuries ago, or so we all believed. But here she is, her power dormant and suppressed, passed down to this precious child who has access to both royal Blackwood strength and ancient Lunaris magic." Nora felt the truth of the words resonate in her bones. Fragments of memory surfaced, her grandmother's cryptic warnings, the strange dreams she had always dismissed, the way magic had always seemed to whisper at the edges of her consciousness. "You are insane," she said, but her voice wavered. "I am visionary," Serafina corrected. With this child's power properly channeled, properly controlled, I can restore the old ways. The council has grown weak, too concerned with human politics and modern sensibilities. We need to return to the strength of our ancestors, and this boy will be the catalyst. He is 5 years old. Nora's voice broke. He is a child who likes picture books and cats. Whatever you think he is, whatever power you believe he is innocent. Innocence is irrelevant, Serafina said coldly. Power is all that matters, and I will have it, one way or another. Asher's eyes, still glowing that eerie silver, turned to Nora. When he spoke, his voice had a strange dual quality, as if something ancient spoke through him. Mama, I can hear her. In my head. She is trying to make me do things. Make me hurt people. But I do not want to hurt people. The sight of her baby trapped in magic he did not understand, manipulated by a monster in designer clothes, shattered something fundamental in Nora. She felt her wolf surge, but this time, something else came with it. Power. Raw, ancient, overwhelming power that had been sleeping in her blood for generations, suppressed by fear and conditioning, and the belief that she was nothing. Silver light exploded from her skin, racing across the floor toward the ritual circle. Serafina's eyes widened in shock as the power shattered her carefully constructed spell like glass. Impossible, she whispered. You are Omega. You cannot have this much power. You have no idea what I am, Nora said, and her voice echoed with the weight of every ancestor who had come before her. The transformation that overtook her was unlike anything she had experienced before. Her wolf surged forward, but it was not the small brown wolf she had always been. Silver fur rippled across her skin, gleaming like starlight. She grew, her form expanding until she stood nearly as tall as Damien in his alpha form. Ancient marks, invisible in her human shape, blazed across her fur in patterns that spoke of moon cycles and forgotten magic. The rogues scattered, their stolen power nothing compared to the primal force Nora had become. Serafina tried to run, but Damien was already there, his hand wrapped around her throat, his eyes promising death. You are finished, he said simply. Nora ignored them both, moving to the circle, where Asher still sat. She shifted back to human form, gathering him into her arms. I have got you, baby. I have got you. You are safe now. Asher collapsed against her, the silver fading from his eyes, leaving them their natural blackwood gold. Mama, I was so scared. But then I heard you calling me, and I knew you would come. Always, Nora promised, tears streaming down her face. I will always come for you. Behind them, Damien's guards had subdued Serafina and the rogues. The woman who had nearly been queen was screaming threats and promises of revenge, but her power was broken. Whatever allies she had cultivated, whatever plans she had made, they were finished. Damien approached Nora and Asher carefully, as if afraid they might disappear if he moved too quickly. Are you all right? Either of you? We will be, Nora said, meeting his eyes over Asher's head. Eventually. Asher pulled back to look at Damien, really look at him, and the resemblance between them was startling. Same bone structure, same intensity in their gaze, same stubborn set to their jaw. You are the man from across the street, Asher said quietly. The one who watches our house. Yes, Damien knelt down to be at eye level with his son. I am sorry if I frightened you. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. Mama says you are one of the protectors. Are you a superhero too? The innocent question broke something in Damien's carefully maintained control. His eyes filled with tears he could not quite suppress. I want to be. For you, I want to be. Asher considered this with the seriousness only a child could manage. Okay, but superheroes do not make their friends cry. He pointed to Nora. She has been sad a lot lately. If you are really a superhero, You should fix that. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. The journey back to Moonstone territory was tense. Damien insisted they come to the palace, arguing that it was the only place they could be truly protected while the investigation into Seraphina's network continued. Nora wanted to refuse, to take Asher back to their quiet apartment and pretend none of this had happened. But she knew she could not. The revelation of her bloodline changed everything. If Seraphina had discovered the truth, others would too. And there would be more who wanted to use Asher for his power. More who saw him as a weapon, rather than a child. The palace was exactly as Nora remembered it. All soaring ceilings and marble floors, and ostentatious displays of wealth and power. But now she saw it through different eyes. Not as the Omega who had been thrown out, but as a woman who had survived, who had built a life from nothing, who had just transformed into a creature of legend to save her son. The whispers started the moment she walked through the doors, Asher's hand clutched firmly in hers. Pack members stared, their shock palpable. The Omega who had been banished had returned, and this time she was not alone. She had the heir to the Blackwood throne at her side, and according to the rumors already spreading like wildfire, she had power that rivaled the old bloodlines. Damien led them to a private wing of the palace, far from the public areas, and the council chambers where politics played out in endless games of manipulation and power. "You will be safe here," he said, showing them into a suite that was larger than Nora's entire apartment. "My personal guards will be stationed outside, and no one gets through without my explicit permission." "This is not necessary," Nora protested. "We can stay in town, somewhere neutral." "After what just happened? After what you revealed?" Damien shook his head. "The council will demand a meeting. The other packs will want to verify your bloodline. And every wolf with an agenda will see you and Asher as either a threat or an opportunity. Here, at least, I can control who has access to you." "You cannot control me," Nora said flatly. "I am not one of your subjects." "I know." Damien's smile was tired. "Believe me, I know. But please, for Asher's sake, stay. At least until we have dealt with the immediate threats." Asher, who had been exploring the suite with wide eyes, ran back to them. "Mama, there is a room with toys and books, and the bed is huge. Can we stay? Please?" Faced with her son's excitement and Damien's logic, Nora found herself nodding. "Fine, but this is temporary." That night, after Asher had fallen asleep in the enormous bed, exhausted from the day's trauma, Nora stood on the balcony overlooking the palace grounds. The moon was full, its light silvering everything it touched, and she felt her wolf stir in response. Not with the violence of earlier, but with a sense of rightness, as if pieces of herself that had been scattered were finally coming back together. "You were magnificent today." Damien's voice came from the doorway. "The way you transformed, the power you commanded. I have never seen anything like it. I did not even know I could do that," Nora admitted. "My grandmother used to tell stories about silver wolves, about magic in our bloodline, but I thought they were just fairy tales. Ways to make a low-ranking Omega feel special. You were never low-ranking." Damien stepped onto the balcony, maintaining a respectful distance. "I see that now. I was blind, and worse, I was a coward who let others define your worth. I am sorry, Nora, for everything I put you through, for the way I treated you, for the years you spent alone raising our son." The apology was 5 years overdue, but it still affected her more than she wanted to admit. "Sorry does not change what happened. It does not give me back the time I lost, or the fear I lived with every day wondering if you would try to take him from me." "I know." Damien moved closer, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "But I am hoping it is a start. Because when I thought I had lost him today, when I imagined what Seraphina might do, I realized something. It was not just fear for my son that tore me apart. It was the thought of losing you, too. Again. You never had me to lose, Nora said, but the words lacked conviction. Did I not? Damien was close enough now that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin, smell the cedar and midnight scent that was uniquely his. That night 5 years ago, when I held you and told you that you were beautiful, that you mattered, my wolf recognized you. I felt the mate bond snap into place, and it terrified me. Because how could the moon goddess pair an alpha king with an omega who had no family, no status, nothing to offer politically? So you rejected me to save face. Nora's anger flared hot and bright. You chose power over your own mate. I chose wrong, Damien said simply, and I have paid for it every day since. Do you know what it is like, feeling the ghost of a mate, bond that was never completed? It is like having a constant ache in your chest, a piece of yourself that is missing. I tried to ignore it, to bury it in work and duty and preparations for a political marriage I never wanted, but it never went away. You never went away. That is not my problem. Nora turned away, unable to look at the raw honesty in his face. You made your choice. You do not get to change your mind just because it is convenient now. It is not about convenience. Damien's hand caught hers, gentle but firm. It is about truth. You are my mate. Nora. The moon goddess herself declared it. And our son is proof that even when we fight against destiny, it finds a way. Destiny. Nora laughed bitterly. Is it destiny that I spent 5 years alone? That I gave birth in a human hospital with no pack, no family, nothing but a kind stranger who took pity on me? Is it destiny that my son asked about his father and I had to tell him he was not wanted? No. Damien pulled her around to face him, his eyes burning with emotion. That was my failure, my weakness. But I am not that man anymore. I have learned what matters. Not the council's approval or political alliances or maintaining appearances. You matter. Asher matters. And if I have to burn down every tradition and expectation to prove that to you, I will. Before Nora could respond, Asher's voice called out from inside. Mama? I had a bad dream. She pulled away from Damien immediately, going to her son. He was sitting up in bed, his eyes wide and frightened, and she gathered him close. It is all right, baby. I am here. You are safe. I dreamed about the lady with red hair. She was trying to take me away again, and you could not find me. Asher's small body trembled against hers. Can you stay with me? Please? Of course. Nora climbed into the bed, pulling him against her side. I am not going anywhere. Damien appeared in the doorway, his expression uncertain. Asher looked at him, then patted the bed on his other side. You can stay too, if you want. Bad dreams are not as scary when there are more people. It was such a simple, innocent invitation, but it felt like stepping off a cliff. Nora met Damien's eyes over Asher's head, seeing her own hesitation mirrored there. But she also saw hope, and something that looked like longing. Okay, she said quietly. Just for tonight. Damien joined them carefully, keeping space between himself and Nora, his attention focused on Asher. Do you want to talk about the dream? It was scary, Asher said. But then, I remembered what you said, about being a superhero. And I thought, if my mama is brave enough to save me, and you want to be a superhero too, then maybe I can be brave as well. You are already the bravest person I know. Nora kissed the top of his head. The bravest and the best. You get that from your mother, Damien said softly. She is the strongest wolf I have ever met. Asher's eyes were already drifting closed again, the security of having both parents near easing his fear. Within minutes, he was asleep, his breathing deep and even. Nora started to extract herself from the bed, but Damien's whispered words stopped her. Stay. Please. Just for tonight, let me pretend this is real. That we are a family. Nora knew she should refuse, should maintain the boundaries that had kept her safe for 5 years. But she was tired, emotionally and physically, and the warmth of having Asher safe between them was too precious to abandon. Just for tonight, she agreed, and let herself drift into sleep with her son's steady heartbeat, a comfort against her side. The morning brought harsh reality in the form of Marcus knocking urgently on the suite door. Damien extricated himself from the bed carefully, leaving Nora and Asher still sleeping, and went to see what crisis demanded his attention now. "The council has called an emergency session," Marcus said grimly. "Word of Lady Seraphina's arrest has spread, and they are demanding explanations. They also want to see the child and verify his bloodline officially." "They can wait," Damien said flatly. "We have more important things to deal with right now." "With respect, my king, they cannot wait. 3 council members have already threatened to call a vote of no confidence if you do not address this immediately. The political ramifications of rejecting your intended mate and producing an heir with an Omega are significant." "Nora is not an Omega," Damien corrected sharply. "She is a silver wolf, descendant of the Lunaris line. If the council has a problem with that, they can take it up with the moon goddess herself." Marcus blinked, clearly taken aback. "A silver wolf? Are you certain? I saw her transform myself. The power she commands is unlike anything in the modern packs. It is ancient, primal, the kind of magic we thought was lost forever." Damien's expression was fierce with pride. "And Asher carries that same potential. If the council tries to dismiss him or his mother because of outdated prejudices about rank, they will answer to me. Then you need to make that clear to them, publicly, now, before the old guard can spin this into a scandal that undermines your authority." Marcus was right, and Damien hated it. "Give me an hour. I need to talk to Nora first. Explain what is coming." When he returned to the suite, Nora was awake, watching Asher sleep with an expression of such fierce love it made Damien's chest ache. She looked up when he entered, reading the tension in his posture. Immediately. "What is wrong?" "The council wants to meet. Both of you. They want verification of Asher's bloodline and an explanation for Seraphina's arrest, and what it means for the succession." Damien sat down on the edge of the bed, careful not to wake Asher. "I can try to delay them, but eventually, this has to happen." "I know," Nora said quietly. "I knew it would the moment Seraphina called me Silver Wolf. That kind of revelation does not stay secret. You do not have to do this alone. I will be with you every step of the way, and I will make it clear that anyone who disrespects you or Asher will answer to me directly." "That might make things worse," Nora pointed out. "If the council thinks you are choosing us over them, over pack stability, it could cause the kind of political crisis you have been trying to avoid." "Let it," Damien said with conviction. "I have spent 5 years making decisions based on politics and duty, and all it has brought me is misery and regret. I will not make the same mistake twice." Nora studied him for a long moment, searching for something in his face. "Why now? Why is it so important to you to make this stand? Is it guilt? Obligation because Asher is your son?" "It is none of those things." Damien took her hand, threading their fingers together. "It is this." He pressed her palm against his chest, where his heart beat steady and strong. "Can you feel it? The way my wolf reacts to your presence? The way everything in me knows that you belong at my side? The mate bond never broke, Nora. I rejected you publicly, tried to sever it, convinced myself it was for the best. But it never broke. It has been there all along, waiting for me to be brave enough to acknowledge it." Nora could feel it, the flutter of recognition in her own chest, the way her wolf reached for his even though she tried to hold it back. It terrified her, this pull toward a man who had hurt her so deeply. "I cannot go through that again," she whispered. "If I let myself believe this, if I let myself trust you, and you change your mind, It will destroy me. Then I will spend every day of the rest of my life proving that I will not change my mind. I will stand before the council and claim you as my true mate. I will dissolve the contract with Serafina's family and deal with whatever political fallout comes. I will put you and Asher above everything else, because you are everything else." Damien leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers. "I am not asking you to forgive me overnight. I am just asking for a chance to earn your trust back, to be the mate you deserved from the beginning." Tears slipped down Nora's cheeks, and she hated them, hated the vulnerability they represented. But she could not deny the truth beating in time with her heart. The mate bond was real. Despite everything, it had survived. "One chance," she said finally. "But if you hurt him, if you fail him the way you failed me, there will not be another." "I understand." Damien kissed her forehead gently, reverently, as if she were something precious and fragile. "I will not waste it." Asher stirred between them, his eyes opening slowly. "Are you guys done talking? I am hungry." The simple, ordinary request broke the tension, and both adults laughed. "Then let us get you some breakfast," Nora said, smoothing his hair. "And maybe we can explain some things to you." Over pancakes in the private dining room, they tried to explain to a 5-year-old the complicated truth of his heritage. Damien spoke carefully, choosing words that were honest but age-appropriate. "Do you remember when I said I wanted to be a superhero for you?" he asked Asher. "Well, the truth is, I am your father, and I have not been a very good one, because I did not know about you. But now that I do, I want to be part of your life, if that is okay with you." Asher looked between Damien and Nora, processing. "So you are my daddy? For real?" "Yes." Damien's voice was rough. "For real? And you are a king? Mama said you are very important and busy." "I am a king, yes, but nothing is more important than you and your mama." "Okay," Asher said with the easy acceptance of childhood. "But can I still call you the superhero? King is kind of a boring name." Damien laughed, genuine and free. "You can call me whatever you want." The council meeting was set for that afternoon. Nora dressed carefully in clothes that Damien had provided, elegant but not ostentatious, designed to command respect without appearing to try too hard. She braided her dark hair back and met her own eyes in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was not the terrified Omega who had fled 5 years ago. She was a mother, a silver wolf, someone who had survived and built a life from nothing. She was worthy of standing in that council chamber, regardless of what they thought. Asher would stay with Martha, who had arrived at the palace that morning with a suitcase and a stern expression that suggested she had a few choice words for anyone who tried to keep her from her honorary grandson. The old woman hugged Nora tightly before she left. "You show them who you really are, girl. Do not let them make you small." The council chamber was exactly as Nora remembered, a circular room with high ceilings, and the Alpha Council seated in a semicircle on a raised platform. 12 alphas, each representing different regions and interests, all of them powerful, all of them looking at her with varying degrees of skepticism and hostility. Damien entered first, his presence filling the room with alpha dominance. Nora followed, her head high, her wolf prowling just beneath her skin. The murmurs started immediately, but Damien's growl silenced them. "This council is called to order. We have much to discuss, but we will do so with respect. Anyone who cannot manage that can leave now." No one moved. Council Head Alpha Thorn, a grizzled veteran with silver streaking ease, through his dark hair, leaned forward. "Alpha King Damien, we have heard disturbing reports about Lady Serafina's arrest and the appearance of a child claiming Blackwood heritage. We require clarity and verification." "You will have both," Damien said. "But first, let me make something clear. Nora Blake stands before you, not as a petitioner seeking approval, but as my true mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. She is also the last living descendant of the Lunaris bloodline, a silver wolf, with power that most of us thought was extinct. She and our son, Asher, have my full protection and recognition. Anyone who challenges that challenges me directly." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Alpha Thorn raised his hand for silence. "These are extraordinary claims. The Lunaris line ended 200 years ago in blood and fire. If what you say is true, it changes everything we know about bloodline magic and power distribution among the packs." "It is true." Damien gestured for Nora to step forward. "And she will demonstrate it for you now, if she chooses. But understand that she does this as a favor, not an obligation." Nora stepped into the center of the circle, feeling 12 pairs of eyes dissecting her every move. She closed her eyes, reaching for the power that had awakened when Asher was in danger. It came more easily this time, rising through her like moonlight through water. She let the transformation take her, felt her human form dissolve into the silver wolf. That was her true self. Gasps echoed through the chamber. She was massive in this form, nearly as large as an alpha, her fur gleaming with an otherworldly sheen. The ancient marks that covered her pelt began to glow, patterns that spoke of moon phases and forgotten rituals. Power radiated from her in waves, making the lesser wolves in the room instinctively lower their eyes. Then she shifted back, standing naked and unashamed before the council, until Damien moved forward with a robe to cover her. "Are you satisfied?" he asked coldly. Alpha Thorn was pale, his eyes wide with something between fear and awe. The legends are true. The silver wolves were not just myth. He cleared his throat, visibly trying to regain composure. "This changes the political landscape significantly. If the Lunaris line has returned, and if it is bound to the Blackwood throne through your son, then we are looking at a concentration of power unlike anything seen in centuries. Which is exactly why my mother tried to harness it." A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. Seraphina's younger brother, Lord Cade Ashford, stepped forward. "My family has spent generations trying to reclaim the influence we lost when the Lunaris line was destroyed." Seraphina became obsessed with the old texts, with finding a way to access that power. When she learned about the child, she saw an opportunity. "You are saying your sister acted alone?" Damien's tone was dangerous. "I am saying my family will cooperate fully with the investigation. We have no desire to protect a traitor, even if she shares our blood. But we do request that the consequences fall on her alone, not on our entire house." Nora spoke for the first time, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "And what of the rogues who helped her? The ones who held my son while she performed her ritual? They had magic, stolen magic. Where did it come from?" Lord Cade shifted uncomfortably. "That is more complicated. There have been rumors for months of a black market in magical artifacts and stolen power. Someone has been selling relics from destroyed bloodlines, teaching rogues how to tap into magic that should have died with its original wielders. My sister was buying from them. Then we have a larger problem than one rogue noble," Alpha Thorn said grimly. "If someone is systematically harvesting and selling bloodline magic, they could destabilize pack hierarchies across the continent. We need to find the source and shut it down." "Agreed," Damien said. "But that is a matter for later. Right now, we need to address the immediate situation. I am formally dissolving my betrothal contract with the Ashford family and claiming Nora Blake as my true mate and queen. Asher Blackwood is my acknowledged heir, with all the rights and protections that entails. You cannot simply dissolve a binding contract." Another council member objected. "The political alliance with the Ashfords has been in place for 5 years. There will be consequences. Then we will face them," Damien said flatly. "I will not marry someone who tried to harm my child, and I will not deny my mate for political convenience. If the council wants to challenge me on this, I will invoke my right as Alpha King to combat trial against anyone who thinks they can dictate my personal choices. The threat of combat trial silenced the objections. No one on the council was young enough or foolish enough to challenge Damian Blackwood directly in physical combat. He was called King for a reason. Alpha Thorne sighed. Very well. Let the record show that, as of this date, the betrothal between Alpha King Damian Blackwood and Lady Seraphina Ashford is dissolved due to attempted harm against the royal heir. Nora Blake is recognized as the Alpha King's true mate, pending completion of the mating bond ceremony. Asher Blackwood is acknowledged as heir to the Blackwood throne, with all appropriate rights and titles. He paused, his expression softening slightly. But I would advise you both to complete the mating bond soon. An acknowledged but unclaimed mate is vulnerable to challenges from those who might want to test the strength of your commitment. We will handle it in our own time, Nora said, before Damian could respond. I have spent 5 years making my own decisions. I am not about to let politics dictate when and how I bond with my mate. Several council members looked shocked that she had spoken so boldly, but Damian's expression was proud. My mate has spoken. The council is dismissed unless there are other urgent matters. There were none. The council members filed out, their whispered conversations already spinning the day's events into the gossip that would spread through every pack by nightfall. When they were alone in the chamber, Nora turned to Damian. That was easier than I expected. The hard part comes next, Damian said. Seraphina will stand trial for kidnapping and attempting to harm a royal heir. The evidence is solid, and the punishment for such crimes is death. But her family will try to negotiate, to offer reparations or exile instead. I will not negotiate. What she did to Asher, to you, cannot be forgiven. I agree, Nora said quietly. But I do not want Asher to grow up knowing that people died because of him. He is already traumatized by what happened. If there is a way to ensure justice without making him carry that weight, we should try. You have a kinder heart than I do. Damian took her hand. But I will consider it. For him. They walked back to the suite together, and for the first time since arriving at the palace, Nora felt like she could breathe. The council had acknowledged them. Asher's position was secure, and Damian had chosen them over politics, just as he had promised. Maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. The days that followed established a new routine. Nora and Asher remained in the palace while the investigation into Seraphina's network continued. Martha stayed as well, appointed as Asher's official governess, much to the old woman's delight. Damian made good on his promise to be present, joining them for meals, reading bedtime stories to Asher, and slowly, carefully, courting Nora as if they were starting fresh. He sent her flowers from the palace gardens, not expensive hothouse roses, but wildflowers that reminded her of the fields near Millbrook. He asked about her day, listened when she talked about the online courses she had been taking, expressed genuine interest in her dreams of maybe opening her own bookstore someday. He did not push for physical intimacy, did not demand she complete the mate bond, just gave her space to heal and decide what she wanted. One evening, 3 weeks after the council meeting, Nora found herself on the same balcony where they had talked that first night. The moon was waning, but still bright enough to silver the grounds below. Damian joined her without invitation, a habit they had developed. Asher asked me today if we were going to get married, he said, his tone casual but his posture tense. What did you tell him? I told him that grown-ups do things in their own time, and that we were figuring out how to be a family first. He seemed satisfied with that answer. Damian paused. But it made me think. What do you want, Nora? Not what the council expects, not what tradition dictates. What do you actually want? It was the question she had been avoiding asking. Herself. I want to feel safe, she said finally. Not just physically safe, but emotionally. I want to know that if I let myself love you again, You will not change your mind when things get difficult or politically inconvenient. I want to believe that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you will still choose us." "I will," Damien said with absolute certainty. "Every single day, I will choose you, both of you. I know you have no reason to believe that yet, but I will prove it. However long it takes." Nora turned to face him fully, studying his features in the moonlight. "Do you know what I realized the other day? When I watch you with Asher, when I see how patient you are with his questions, how you never talk down to him, how you genuinely listen when he tells you about his day, I see the man I met 5 years ago, the one who made me laugh over terrible coffee and listen to my dreams like they mattered. That man got lost somewhere in politics and duty, but he is still there. He never really left." Damien moved closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth. He was just buried under the weight of expectations and the fear of being seen as weak. But I do not care about that anymore. I would rather be seen as weak and have you than be seen as strong and alone. "You are not weak," Nora said softly. "Admitting mistakes, choosing love over convenience, standing up to the entire council for what you believe is right. That is not weakness. That is the strongest thing you have ever done." The space between them was charged with possibility. Damien raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her cheek. "Can I kiss you?" The question, the simple act of asking permission, instead of taking what he wanted, broke through the last of Nora's resistance. "Yes." His lips met hers gently, reverently, as if she were something precious that might break. The kiss was nothing like the passionate, desperate one they had shared 5 years ago. This was softer, sweeter, weighted with promise instead of urgency. The mate bond flared between them, recognizing, rejoicing, and Nora felt her wolf rise to meet his. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I want to complete the bond," Nora said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Not because the council says we should, and not because of Asher, but because I want you. I want this. I want us." Damien's eyes flared gold. "Are you sure? We can wait. I do not want you to feel pressured." "I am sure." Nora took his hand, leading him back inside. "I have spent 5 years being afraid, being alone, protecting myself from getting hurt again. But I am tired of being afraid. And I think maybe the moon goddess was right. Maybe you are my mate, and I am yours. And everything that happened was just the universe making sure we were ready for each other." They moved to Damien's private chambers, a space Nora had never seen. It was surprisingly simple for a king, decorated in dark woods and deep blues, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the moonlight. "Are you nervous?" Damien asked as he locked the door behind them. "Terrified," Nora admitted, "but in a good way. Like standing on the edge of something important and choosing to jump." Then we jumped together. Damien pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I love you, Nora Blake. I have loved you since that night 5 years ago, and I will love you until the end of my days, and beyond. That, if the moon goddess permits." "I love you too," Nora whispered, and felt the truth of it resonate through every cell of her body. "Even when I hated you, even when I was so angry I could barely breathe, some part of me always loved you, and I am done fighting it." The mating bond ceremony was simple in its essence, even if the emotions behind it were complex. They undressed each other slowly, relearning the map of skin and scars and changes that 5 years had brought. When Damien finally entered her, it felt like coming home, like finding a piece of herself she had not known was missing. The bond snapped into place with the force of thunder, golden light exploding between them as their wolves merged and recognized each other as eternal mates. Nora felt Damien's presence flood through the mate bond, felt his love and regret, and fierce determination to be worthy of her. And she sent back her own feelings, the complicated mix of pain and hope and growing trust that defined where they were. When it was over, they lay tangled together in the moonlight, the bond pulsing steady and strong between them. "How do you feel?" Damien asked, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "Complete," Nora said, and realized it was true. "Like I have been walking around with a missing piece, and finally found it." "I am going to make you queen," Damien said suddenly. "A proper coronation, with the full ceremony and the council's blessing, and everything you should have had from the beginning. I do not need a crown to know my worth." Nora turned to look at him. "I raised your son alone. I built a life from nothing. I transformed into a silver wolf to save him when magic I did not even know I had answered my call. I am already a queen in every way that matters." "I know." Damien kissed her temple. "But I want the world to know it too. I want every wolf who ever dismissed you, every council member who questioned your place at my side, to bow before you and acknowledge what I have always known. You are extraordinary. Flattery will get you everywhere." Nora smiled against his chest. "But I will consider it, for Asher. So he grows up seeing his mother honored and respected, not hidden away like a shameful secret." "He will grow up seeing his mother loved," Damien corrected. "Honored and respected and loved. I will make certain of it." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, and the mate bond that finally, after 5 years of separation and pain, bound them together irrevocably. The coronation happened a month later, a grand ceremony that drew alphas and dignitaries from across the continent. Nora wore a gown of silver that seemed to shift and shimmer like moonlight, with a crown crafted specifically for her that incorporated symbols from both the Blackwood and Lunaris lines. Asher stood beside her in miniature formal wear, his golden eyes bright with excitement as he watched his mother receive the recognition she had always deserved. When Damien placed the crown on her head and declared her his queen before the assembled packs, the bond between them blazed so bright that several wolves claimed they could see it like a physical light connecting them. Nora's voice was steady and clear as she accepted the crown, not with gratitude, but with the confidence of someone who knew her own worth. "I stand before you not as someone seeking approval, but as someone who has proven through trials and survival that I am worthy of this position. I am Nora Blake Blackwood, descendant of the Lunaris line, mate to your king, mother to your future alpha. I will serve these packs with wisdom, compassion, and the fierce determination to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And I will teach my son to do the same." The assembled wolves erupted in howls of approval. Even those who had questioned her place could not deny the power of her presence, the way she commanded the room without aggression, with pure force of character. After the ceremony, at the celebration feast, Asher tugged on Damien's sleeve. "Papa?" The word was still new, still said with a touch of wonder. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything, little one." Damien knelt to his level. "Are you and Mama going to have more babies? Because I think I would like a little sister. Or maybe a brother. I am not picky." Damien laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Would you like that? Being a big brother?" "Yes. Then I could teach them stuff, and protect them, always have someone to play with. Because being alone is not as fun." Asher's simple wisdom cut through all the complex emotions of the day. Nora joined them, overhearing the conversation. "We will see what the moon goddess has planned," she said diplomatically. But her eyes met Damien's over their son's head with promise and possibility. Later that night, when Asher was asleep and the palace had finally quieted after the day's celebrations, Nora and Damien stood together in what was now their shared chambers. "Did you ever imagine we would end up here?" Nora asked, leaning back against Damien's chest as they looked out over the moonlit grounds. "When you threw me out 5 years ago, could you have imagined this?" "No," Damien admitted, his arms wrapping around her waist. "I was too blind, too foolish. But the moon goddess works in mysterious ways. Maybe we needed those 5 years. Maybe I needed to lose you to understand what you meant to me. Maybe you needed to prove to yourself that you could survive alone before you could trust someone else again. Maybe, Nora agreed. Or maybe sometimes the universe just breaks our hearts to see if we are strong enough to put them back together better than before. Either way, I am grateful for where we are now. For you, for Asher, for the family we are building together. Damien pressed a kiss to her shoulder. I spent so long thinking power meant control, meant never showing weakness or choosing personal happiness over duty. But true power is this: having someone you would burn the world down to protect. Having a child who looks at you like you hung the moon. Having a mate who forgives you even when you do not deserve it and loves you anyway. I did not forgive you because you deserved it, Nora said honestly. I forgave you because holding on to that anger was poisoning me. And because I saw you change, saw you put us first, saw you become the man I always believed you could be. Forgiveness is not about the person who wronged you. It is about freeing yourself from the weight of their mistakes. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? The epilogue came 5 years later, another full moon illuminating the palace grounds where Nora and Damien stood watching their children play. Asher, now 10 years old and already showing signs of the powerful alpha he would become, was teaching his twin siblings, Lyra and Cade, how to track in the gardens. The 3-year-olds were more interested in chasing butterflies, but Asher was patient with them, just as Damien had been patient with him. He is going to be a good alpha, Nora observed, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly where another child grew. He has your compassion and my stubbornness. A dangerous combination, Damien agreed, his hand covering hers. But a necessary one. The world needs leaders who are both strong and kind. The investigation into the black market magical trade had taken years, but they had finally dismantled the network and recovered hundreds of stolen artifacts. Serafina was serving life exile in the far northern territories, stripped of her title and forbidden from ever entering Packlands again. Her family had survived the scandal, but lost significant political influence. The Ashford name was no longer spoken with the reverence it once commanded. In the aftermath, Damien had reformed the council structure, giving voice to lower-ranked wolves and implementing policies that made it possible for anyone with ability to rise in pack hierarchy, not just those born into the right families. Nora had been instrumental in these changes, using her own experience to advocate for wolves who had been marginalized or overlooked. She had also established a network of safe houses for wolves fleeing abusive situations, places where they could rebuild their lives without fear. The bookstore she had dreamed of now existed in the capital city, run by Martha with Nora's financial backing, serving as both a business and a community gathering place. And the most unexpected development had been the emergence of other wolves with dormant magical bloodlines. Nora's transformation had apparently triggered something in the collective unconscious of wolf kind, and over the past 5 years, 3 other families had discovered they carried traces of ancient powers, thought lost. A new council position had been created specifically to research and preserve these bloodline magics, ensuring they would never be lost again. Asher ran up to them, slightly out of breath. "Papa, Lyra says she saw a silver wolf in the gardens last night. I told her it was probably Mama, but she insists it was someone else. Was there another silver wolf here?" Damien and Nora exchanged glances. The number of silver wolves was still small. Only 4 living descendants of the Lunaris line had been found, but it was possible one of them had visited the palace. "I will look into it," Damien promised. "But you know the palace grounds are heavily protected. If there was a silver wolf here, it was someone we invited." "Okay." Asher accepted this easily. "Can we do combat training after dinner?" You promised to teach me the advanced moves. After homework, Nora interjected. You have that history paper due tomorrow. Asher groaned but did not argue. He knew better than to challenge his mother when she used that particular tone. As he ran back to collect the twins, Damien turned to Nora with a smile. Do you remember what you said that first night back at the palace? That you wanted to feel safe, to know I would choose you even when things got difficult? I remember. Nora leaned into his embrace. You have chosen us every single day. Through political challenges, through the stress of reforming the council, through sleepless nights with colicky twins and a wolf pup going through his first shift. You have proven yourself 1,000 times over. And I will keep proving it, Damien promised. Every day for the rest of our lives. Because you are my mate, my queen, my everything. And there is nothing in this world I value more than the family we have built together. The twins came running back, demanding their parents play hide-and-seek before dinner. Nora laughed and agreed, chasing after them with Damien at her side. As the sun set and the moon began to rise, the palace grounds filled with the sound of laughter and joy, a far cry from the cold, political space it had been when Nora first arrived all those years ago. She had been cast out, rejected, humiliated. But she had survived. More than survived, she had thrived. She had raised a son alone, discovered her own power, rebuilt her life from ashes. And when fate had brought her back to the man who had broken her heart, she had been strong enough to give him a second chance, wise enough to forgive, and brave enough to love again. The moon goddess had woven a strange path for them, full of pain and separation and hard-won wisdom. But looking at her family, at the life they had created together, Nora would not change a single moment. Because every heartbreak had led them here, to this perfect evening with their children laughing and the mate bond glowing warm and steady between them. And that, she thought as Damien caught her hand and pulled her close for a kiss while the twins giggled and Asher pretended to be disgusted, was worth every tear she had ever cried.